You're probably ordering the wrong labs. Not bad labs or labs that aren't helpful at all. They're just basic labs that miss what actually moves the needle when it comes to your health, performance, and longevity. Welcome to sammillerscience, where you're joining me nearly 2 decades into my personal journey to bridge the gap between macros, metabolism, muscle, and medicine. If you're joining me, thanks for trusting me to elevate your health and realize your true potential. Each week and inside every episode, I'll be sharing methods and models from my coaching journey and my personal experience, as well as the science that you need to achieve whatever specific goals you're working on in your life. Let's jump in to today's show. This is because basic labs are only giving you part of the picture when it comes to what's going on inside your body. They're a pretty good start, but they tend to miss key thyroid hormone markers and insulin markers that actually drive results, whether that's for yourself or if you work with clients. Inside this episode, I'm breaking down 9 precision panels by body system and showing you what I consider to be the good, the better, and the best markers so you can stop copy-pasting panels and actually start ordering what's right for you. Now, remember before we dive in that labs are most useful when they connect to symptoms and biofeedback, health history information, and the context of things like our training and overall lifestyle. They're not as helpful when used in isolation. It's still data, but it's data without context. Baseline labs are useful yearly and more important when symptoms, cycle issues, suspected insulin resistance, metabolic adaptation, or other persistent biofeedback issues are not necessarily present. Going to the better and best labs, that is going to give you the most information when it comes to health, longevity, and performance. First up, let's dive right in with blood sugar and insulin resistance. Now, on most basic panels, what you're going to see is fasting glucose. Now, this is a good marker, but a better version would be fasting glucose and A1C, and an even better or best version of this is going to have fasting insulin, A1C, triglyceride to HDL ratio, and SHBG. Also, some honorable mention markers would be glycomark and C-peptide. Glucose can look normal while insulin is working harder in the background. So this is why ideally we want more than just glucose. We add that triglyceride to HDL ratio for overall metabolic health. And then even something like SHBG can be helpful when looking at insulin resistance in the context of other hormones. Another common area where you see a lot of basic labs is thyroid health. So you'll see, pretty good or basic labs, which is going to be TSH, and maybe you get a T4 marker. Better is going to have TSH, free T4, and free T3. And the best thyroid panels are going to have free T3, free T4, TPO antibodies, other autoimmune markers and information, and maybe even reverse T3 to have an idea of how things like inflammation or chronic dieting are impacting our thyroid hormone conversion. Another area of the body where you're going to see a lot of basic markers drawn is going to be related to kidney function. So typically you'll see primary care physicians pull things like blood urea nitrogen and creatinine, but this can be skewed in athletes and people who eat high protein. So going beyond the CMP or comprehensive metabolic panel, we'd like to see cystatin C and EGFR. This is because blood urea nitrogen and creatinine can be benignly elevated in muscular, active, higher protein intake individuals, even in clients who use something like creatine. Cystatin C can be a better kidney marker in these athletic populations, and it's still good in non-athletic populations as well as a kidney screening tool. Next, let's talk men's health, because sex hormones are one of the reasons that people are ordering labs in the first place, is they want to check things like their testosterone levels. Now, a basic panel, a good marker is going to be total testosterone, but that doesn't give you the full picture. So a better panel is going to have total testosterone and free testosterone. The best men's health panel would have total testosterone, free testosterone, SHBG, estradiol, dihydrotestosterone, DHEA, and luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which helps just identify the communication between the brain and the testicles in the first place, which has to do with our overall men's health signaling and hormone production. So if you only have total testosterone, you're not really fully understanding the entire endocrine system. You're just seeing that total number and not even what's free and acting on those androgen receptors. When we dive into women's health and the female panel, a typical panel you'll often see at an OB's office is something like estradiol and maybe progesterone. Sometimes that progesterone is not even drawn at the appropriate time of the month, which ideally is between day 17 and 21 of the menstrual cycle, or subtracting 8 days in longer cycles. The best panels are going to have estradiol, progesterone, testosterone for women as well, free testosterone, SHBG, LH and FSH, and prolactin, since prolactin can contribute to PMS symptoms. Female hormone labs need symptom and cycle context to be most effective in terms of interpreting this as to how it applies to your lifestyle, nutrition, and training. But we want all of these markers so we can see the ratios of these hormones and the relative balance of things like progesterone and estradiol and testosterone, and even looking at things like sex hormone binding globulin, which can bind up our free testosterone and contribute to overall symptoms, mood, and energy levels. One thing we talk about a lot in terms of women and female hormones in our functional nutrition and metabolism specialization is how patterns like low progesterone relative to estrogen, or low estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone together, or elevated estrogen can contribute to female hormone symptoms. Another pattern we want to look at is elevated SHBG with low free testosterone. We see that a lot in individuals who are on oral contraceptives and people who have been dieting for a long period of time. Low carb diets tend to raise SHBG, and that means sometimes we will see that lower free testosterone as well. Another set of markers that we want to look at is related to inflammation. Now, while inflammation isn't necessarily just one organ system or related to one singular hormone or chemical messenger, we still want to look at inflammation. Now, it's a popular buzzword in the industry, but typically when a primary care physician's looking at inflammation, they're going to just pull something like a complete blood count, because that can give you some idea of immune system activity and activation. But the best panels will also have highly sensitive C-reactive protein, sometimes ESR if there's suspected autoimmune risk, but really we're highlighting highly sensitive C-reactive protein here. We can also use CBC-derived immune context, looking at things like the systemic immune inflammatory index, which is calculated by having that complete blood count panel. And since so many of us care about our nutrition and nutrient status, we can't really begin to talk about health testing without talking about micronutrients. A lot of panels you'll see will have vitamin D on there, but a better panel will include vitamin D and ferritin, and maybe even some other nutrient testing as well. But the best testing will have a complete iron panel, vitamin D, maybe even methylmalonic acid to give you a better indicator of B12 status. And we can even use alkaline phosphatase into the CMP as a practical first pass marker for certain micronutrients like zinc. Adding RBC magnesium also really helps to round this out and can give you an idea of your body's magnesium status. Now, with these nutrients, we can always be using clues from the CBC and CMP, but if we really want to get more specific than just using things like MCV and alkaline phosphatase, which are in the CBC and CMP, we can get more specific. So ordering things like going beyond just serum iron, if you have ferritin, total iron binding capacity, percent saturation, and transferrin, those are all really helpful, especially if someone has concerns around their iron status. So if you round that out with vitamin D and RBC magnesium, some individuals may even want to order something like plasma zinc. Those can be add-ons to give you a very nice picture when it comes to nutrient status. The next area we want to dive into is stress, because so many individuals live a higher stress lifestyle in the Western world. A pretty good marker to have here, if you're ordering serum labs already, could be something like a morning cortisol reading. Now, people will argue that because with our diurnal rhythm, we ideally want to see multiple points of the day and deeper cortisol context and circadian rhythms, and even the metabolite context that we get in something like a Dutch adrenal. But I think it's important to mention that different individuals are going to have different discretionary income when it comes to labs. And so how they look at stress and what markers are available to us, as well as adding on additional testing, it's something we need to consider on a case-by-case basis. So if you have the ability to get a multi-point salivary or a multi-point Dutch adrenal, those are a potential place to look when it comes to stress, cortisol, and diurnal rhythm, and even being able to see some of those metabolites. But if we are balling on a budget, we can always just add that serum cortisol and get that done with blood work when someone's already going in to get other testing, since it's not a super expensive measure and can still be helpful for someone who may not have previously drawn that marker or has no idea of the effect of their cortisol levels on their body. This episode wouldn't be complete without including heart health markers and cardiometabolic risk markers. Cardiovascular disease is one of the leading causes of death in the Western world, and especially in the United States. And all too often, people are only getting a standard lipid panel, just getting basic HDL and LDL and total cholesterol. A better panel would have those lipids, but also add triglycerides. And the best panel would have HDL, LDL, triglycerides, but also ApoB, lipoprotein A, highly sensitive C-reactive protein, and fasting insulin. Now, traditional cholesterol markers are still a screening that's a part of Western medicine, but ideally, when we're looking at cardiovascular risk, we need to understand what's going on from a lipoprotein burden perspective, insulin resistance, inflammation, and stress, all as a picture and all related to metabolic health, not just cholesterol alone. Triglycerides are one of the earliest clues for metabolic dysfunction, so we want to look there. ApoB helps to quantify the total number of plaque-developing particles, and LPA is a genetic cardiovascular risk marker that's often missed on standard labs, even in individuals who have a cardiovascular disease history. We also look at hsCRP because inflammation can accelerate cardiovascular disease risk, and then fasting insulin helps connect the dots between cardiometabolic health and insulin resistance, because individuals who are insulin resistant and pre-diabetic may be trending towards cardiovascular disease if they don't get their lifestyle and nutrition in check. Inside today's episode, we talked about some of the blood sugar and insulin resistance marker to look at before glucose looks bad. We talked about male and female reproductive health and why total testosterone is not enough for men, and why women often don't get all the labs that they need. In terms of thyroid, we know that TSH isn't enough to have a full picture of thyroid health, and ideally we want more downstream information to connect the dots between symptoms and test scores. With the kidneys, we talked about 2 additional markers that can be added to give insight on individuals who are already consuming high protein, are active and exercising, because these will be more precise indicators of kidney health and can be even used for folks with a bit of a hereditary history related to kidney disease. For inflammation, we move beyond the buzzword of just inflammation and how people talk about it on Instagram and actually provided context into a specific marker that can be used for a variety of aspects of your overall health. And for nutrient status, we took a complete deep dive into all things iron, vitamin D, magnesium, and more. If you'd like an even longer training on this and some discussion around related topics going beyond labs and also discussing some relevant information related to health testing, genetics, and peptides, shoot me a message on Instagram with the word labs, and I'll send you an additional free workshop. It's longer than this podcast where you can dive in and get even more information. Now, this one is designed specifically for health coaches and health professionals. So if you are not a health coach, stay tuned to my free content and check out some more of our free resources that are designed for improving your own health. But if you are a health coach or someone who works with clients in their transformation, shoot me that message on Instagram with the word labs, and I'll get that training sent over to you right away. If you enjoyed this episode and think someone else might benefit, whether it's for their own health or if they work with others, please pay it forward and either drop them a link to the show or share it on social media and tag me. I'm at sammillerscience on just about every major platform. Chances are you probably found the show because someone either shared it with you, or them liking the show or dropping a rating and review is what caused it to pop up in your podcast algorithm. I appreciate you guys tuning in to today's episode all about these lab markers and how I would overhaul traditional testing, upgrading those basic labs and creating some more advanced testing for those of you who want those game-changing insights for health, performance, longevity, and more. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you in the next show.